Hey everybody, welcome to our super formal year-end Indie Games of the Year Top X podcast / roundtable featuring myself, Northernlion, as well as Baertaffy, Rockleesmile, and Matt Has Games.
Hello.
Hello.
Damn it, it's not my name.
That is.
All right, hi.
It's your alias.
My alias. Thanks to Nick.
Your internet identity.
Meanwhile, I think my cat is pooping.
Well, that's like probably the 9th best game of this year.
Yeah, right, I was going to say I wanted to save that for later on.
Damn.
So we're going to talk about what we like this year. I think we're going to make it exclusively indie-ish stuff just to add a little extra flavor because that's what we've played a lot of. To be honest, I don't know what the heck we're going to do because I was just invited to be here as a contributor and now I'm running the show. But I think we're going to suggest some games and we're going to roundtable and talk about them and we're going to see if we agree. Why don't we, I think we all have our own kind of independent lists in our head or on some kind of electronic or other piece of paper.
Yeah.
Bear, why don't you start? Why don't you suggest something? What was one of your favorite games of the year?
Yeah, and I figured we could try to take it in a little bit of a chronological order here. So I'm going to go back to way back in the year with Banished, which I know is one that quite a few of us had an extensive experience with. The new city builder. I think it kind of caught a lot of people off guard too, didn't it? Like it slightly came out of nowhere and it became very popular. It was the #1 seller on Steam for quite some time.
Yeah, it was actually. It
was one of those games where I started playing and I'm like, oh, this is something fun. I could definitely do this on my channel for a little while because I'm enjoying myself with it. And then all of a sudden there was like thousands of views. I'm like, oh, this is a really popular game. I think it's really good.
It really benefited from... I liked it a lot too. I think it benefited from SimCity.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, SimCity was
timing.
And it was one of those city builders that was basic, like, I don't want to say basic, but I guess it's the right word to use.
Accessible.
Accessible.
There
for
you
people
go.
who never really played city builders to really start to learn and understand and actually be good at this particular game because it didn't require an in-depth knowledge of all these different things that something like, I don't know, one of the more prominent city builders, I think Rome is a city builder out there, would require.
I remember back when the whole SimCity debacle was going down. I don't know if Banished was the game that I'm thinking of here, but I know that there was a big effort given toward one particular developer that was kind of promising all the stuff that SimCity failed on. And now that I think about it more, I'm pretty sure that wasn't Banished. But I think, just like Ryan said, it kind of took the reins there, and it very much capitalized on it. I think it was more of just like a fortunate timing in the release than the developers of Banished really even planning anything around that. But it certainly delivered on the elements that I think a lot of people were looking forward to with SimCity and were kind of disappointed on.
How could you even, even if you wanted to, how would you be able to plan for that? You'd have to just, see what's coming up in the AAA space and then just design an indie game in case it fails.
There's just stuff like 5 just waiting in the works for, the failed releases of Dark Souls 3 and all that shit coming down the road.
My favorite thing about Banished, I like it. I think there are some things that I would have liked to have been done differently, but you have to give it some credit because it was basically designed by one dude and some contract workers or something like that. So that's pretty ridiculous that a game of that kind of magnitude came from one person, basically. But I would have preferred if it was a little bit more heavily tutorialized because as I understood it, thinking back, people were like, you're doing a really shitty job, which is true. But then on normal, it doesn't actually place the proper stresses on you or something. I remember a Roomba being like, yeah, if you actually play on hard is a better tutorial because what doesn't work just gets you killed right off the bat. Whereas on normal, they kind of let you coast on life support for a little bit. Also, I love that it was a little bit broken in the way that people wouldn't share resources. So it sometimes it created this emerging gameplay where it'd be like, well, we've got no food in the storehouse, but one family has 50 fish that they're you're like, come on,
It's good for the winter.
Right.
I think the late game suffered as well because once you understood the basics of the game, you really understood the game itself. The only things that could really kill you later on in the game were natural disasters. Once you had a really good flow of good production and food to the people that were living in your village, there really wasn't that much of a challenge. And that was, I would say, that's something I'd critique it for. One of the weird things that I really liked about it, though, is how your village would initially start as just placing buildings of convenience, and as your city grew and grew, it became more and more organized, so you could always go back to the center of your city and see the mess of a city that it is, and as it became more organized, as you got better and as you expanded the city outward. I like that.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
That mindset actually does remind me a little bit of another game that I wanted to discuss here, The Long Dark, which is still in early access. Yeah, it's excellent. It's a survival exploration game. If you haven't played it, you take the role of a man lost in the Canadian wilderness. So you're basically Northernlion, and you're just wandering around trying to survive in any means necessary. But like Math has said, it kind of gets to the point where you're eventually just like establishing a base and rarely moving around too much. You've just kind of stockpiled all of your resources there, and then you just grind it out for the long haul, which kind of feels similar to the way the Banished late game ended up being for the most part.
Yeah, The Long Dark is one of those games where, and again, it's still pretty early in early access as well right now.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly, I wouldn't say feature complete, but it's surprisingly polished for what it is. But it's one of those games where the environment will kill you more than anything else. So if you don't have to move, if you don't have to travel, you really don't want to, because God forbid you're out scavenging and a snowstorm hits and you can't see anything, the weather plummets, and you're stuck out there without a way of making a fire or cooking any food. You're just dead, and you could just be like, well, I shouldn't have left the house today. So if you don't have to leave the house, you really don't want to, and I think the game needs to give you more reasons to go out and explore, but I think that'll come in time.
This really is a story of my life, because that's the philosophy that I take on a regular basis.
man.
Yeah, don't go outside unless you have to.
Yeah.
I have not actually played The Long Dark, but I'm looking forward to it. They're the local developers-ish, depending on how big you think the Vancouver region is. I know they're on Vancouver Island. I kind of got burned out on survival stuff this year, though. I realized...
it was a very popular genre, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thinking is that I need to go like a full year without chopping down a tree.
Well, that's why I really like The Long Dark, because there is no tree chopping.
But
you don't see it. It
right?
happens.
You go like, I want to spend like 3 hours chopping wood.
Right,
And then
correct, and then it'll load
logs.
up. Yeah, exactly. That's what.
That's
it
a
does.
good start.
It's more of a number management, because you're managing your calories, your hunger, your thirst, your supplies, your heat, all that, and all that's represented with numbers. So it's
really, when you look at it, all these survival games just become Dwarf Fortress at some point. So you might as well just play that, right?
True. Just play Dwarf Fortress, whatever.
What it did for me was sort of scratch the itch that not having a new Fallout style game left. I really wanted some kind of like gathering management thing with really good ambience, and I think that they really delivered on that. When we were talking about it just earlier, were you more referring to the sandbox mode? Because I didn't know that the
adventure's not done yet. I don't think the sandbox mode is still pretty much all anything.
That certainly speaks volumes if we can be this positive on it and the main game isn't even done yet. Yeah, we all like it.
The story will only be released when the game is officially released, has been their statement. So
right.
Everything else is mechanics.
Ryan, how about you want to bring one up for the table?
Sure. I'm gonna.
I think you only played one game this year.
I'm gonna try to stick to chronological order, because I actually do have a pretty good handle on when these games came out. Did anybody else play the Banner Saga?
I have it. I never played it.
Yeah, same. I don't know. It just like never grabbed me that much. I don't know why.
All right, so I will talk very briefly about the Banner Saga, because nobody else is going to talk about the Banner Saga. I think the Banner Saga deserves a decent deal of respect. I think it was a really good year for turn-based tactical strategy games. I haven't played Valkyria Chronicles yet, but I hear that's pretty excellent. The Banner Saga, like really cool, like Don Bluth art style. With like it really, you should look up a screenshot if you haven't actually looked at it, because it looks like a 90s. Like cell animated film, like Secret of Nim or something like that, which is really cool. And as for the actual tactical gameplay, it introduced this cool element that I've never seen before, but it makes a lot of sense if you're the kind of person who's worried about like realism and immersion. As your players get hurt, as they lose HP, they actually deal less damage to kind of simulate them being injured. So you can't really have like a tanky class that just takes all the damage and then have a DPS character. I mean, maybe you should do that, but like you can't have somebody that's the jack of all trades. And if you're really high DPS guys get injured, then you're in trouble because they can't deal that damage anymore, which I thought was really cool. Yeah. There's some problems with it. The story, I think, goes on a little long. It's got some cool kind of like FTL type stuff going on, but it's fairly rare. And they don't bill it as an episodic game, but it's episodic. Like the Banner Saga 2 just got announced to come out next year, and it was like people were like, "Oh, I like that game. I'm glad there's a sequel." Like the ending is a total cliffhanger.
Was this a Kickstarter game?
It was a Kickstarter game. I think they made like it was either $80,000 or $400,000.
Either or, you know.
One of the two.
Either I'm making $10,000 a year, or I'm making $1 million. I mean,
Yeah,
Something
it's
like
the
that.
Social Blade. The Social Blade application for Kickstarter.
Oh man, how many people will get that one? I hope a lot.
Yeah, it was good. And you know, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Massive Chalice a little bit as well. Obviously, there's been some controversy surrounding Double Fine a little bit, but Massive Chalice was cool in its own way, and it kind of combined the same elements of the Banner Saga with eugenics, which was cool.
That's still early access, isn't it?
It is still in early access right now. It started an awesome argument that I was really a big fan of in my comments about social Darwinism. So I was pretty excited about that. But it's cool. I really like the idea that you can, you have to kind of like choose which fighters of yours or which class members to take out of the rotation to actually breed like new people for your army. So there's like a real sacrifice there.
That's reminiscent of that Nintendo game, Fire Emblem.
Yes, that's what another thing that came up in the comments is you need to play Fire Emblem, and I don't disagree.
Well, I'm going to take it out of chronological order here because you're talking about turn-based games, and I'm going to bring up Xenonauts.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because I don't think anybody here has played Xenonauts.
have
I
not.
played the early access build.
Yeah. Well,
last
so it officially released this year, and it's basically hard mode XCOM, I guess is the way you can play it, because I'm sure all of you played the new XCOM?
Yes.
I know you have, Ryan. And
Yeah.
Nick, have you?
You mean with the newest expansion, or?
Yeah, just like the new remastered made by 2K 3D XCOM.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of that game does really well, and I really enjoyed that game. But one of the things it did drastically differently compared to the old XCOM back from the early 90s is it puts you on a little bit more of an even playing field right from the get-go. So aliens don't get to act until you find them, and then they get this little cutscene and they get to do their thing. That's how new XCOM works. In Xenonauts, it takes it back to old school XCOM style. It's a spiritual successor, they call it, where right away you feel like you are fighting an uphill battle. The war is drastically out of your favor. You'll hit the battlefield with like your 9 soldiers right in your very first battle, and you'll be lucky to walk away with 2 or 3 alive after that. The aliens can see you out of a fog of war that you can't see them. They will shoot you. Doesn't matter if you can see them or not, and just rip you apart. And it's those 2 or 3 that will survive that first battle that you'll start to cherish and really kind of nurture and make will eventually be your captains and stuff. And then that uphill battle that you're constantly fighting starts to even out, and there's a real sense of accomplishment there that I feel like the newer XCOM doesn't necessarily have. It's still kind of present in the newer XCOM, but it's that overcoming these insane odds that Xenonauts and the old XCOM did really well that Xenonauts kind of brings back. There's some things I don't like about it. It's got that old base building style that the old XCOM has, so it's kind of like this jigsaw puzzly, top-down, trying to fit buildings optimally in this small little square. There's a lot of micromanagement because you're going to have like 4, 5, 6 different bases spanning across the globe. It adds almost an element of barely keeping your head above water at all times, which is... Yeah, ho-ho, there it is.
Gotta get one in there, man.
That I think it's trying to go for, but it can get a little tedious sometimes. But overall, I really enjoyed Xenonauts.
Excellent. I'm going to try to take it back a little bit in the chronological fashion. One that I'm pretty sure all of us played and enjoyed thoroughly, Jazz Punk, back in February.
Oh, that was going to be mine, man.
Oh, man. Well, here, I'll let you take off on it then.
Oh, it's all right. Let's share the spotlight. It was a fantastic adventure, first-person, irreverent comedy game. I'm not really even sure what classification to drop on it, but it has a fantastic art style. It's really funny and weird, and I don't think there's been a whole lot ever else like that that I can think of anyway. And it just came out of nowhere. I had no idea this thing was going to show up, and then bam, there it was, and I played through it very, very quickly because I just was loving every minute of it, and the laughs actually kept coming through the whole thing too, which is a little tough to sustain in most games. I mean, as far as it being a game, it's certainly one of those ones that it maybe falls more in the classification of an experience than a game, but it does have some gameplay moments. It's just more of an evolving narrative that's just kind of funny to be a part of over just like you do X and Y happens.
It's almost exactly like Proteus, right? They're basically the same game.
Yeah, exactly the same thing. You just wander through a psychedelic field. That's it.
No, it really was. It was like one of the very few games this year, and really just like of any game that made me laugh out loud a lot. Like it was extremely funny, and of course, published by Adult Swim. Naturally, who else would publish a game like this? But yeah, it was terrific, and I'm still surprised by I find a lot of people haven't played Jazzpunk yet, and which is weird to me because it got a huge buzz back when it came out. But yeah, it was hilarious. It's fantastic. Loved it.
I wish it was longer is really the only thing. Like I loved the premise so much. I wanted to see like the story continue to go further in, and it just kind of was over. But I had a very fun time playing through that game. I definitely recommend it.
I don't want to spoil too much, but I really like... I didn't finish the game, but I played through to the level where you're like in the Caribbean or you're like on a beach resort somewhere.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty far into the game.
It's most of the way through it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do that gag where it has like the plane flying over the map like they do in Indiana Jones, and it just keeps going and going and going and going. And I was like, wait, is this like a loading screen? And then it just kept going, and I got into like that Adult Swim like surreal Too Many Cooks thing where I was like, I'm gonna follow this. And then I realized that you're actually flying the plane. So for like 15 minutes, I was just watching it go, and I was like, man, that is commitment to a joke. And then I was like, oh, I gotta direct the plane to the landing spot.
Okay, I love you. Bye-bye.
I played this at PAX Prime 2013, and I thought it was horrible when I played it in the demo. But I think it's because I had no idea what to expect, and the developer was there, but he wasn't saying anything because that's the way he wants the game to be experienced. So I just kind of like walked around, and I was like, what is this?
It's really hard to do a game like that at PAX.
Yeah.
I
think if you went into this totally blind, you might honestly have the experience just like you did. Like even upon full release right now, if you didn't tell who you were telling to play this game anything about it, they might hate it, which is kind of the risk you take, I guess.
I don't know, the comedy element, it's so like kitschy, it's so in your face. Like I feel like you would notice that right away.
Yeah,
I did not.
That's what I took. No,
but I think like I played. I guess it was like an hour and a half or 2 hours of it when it came out, and I liked it. I benefited from knowing that it was kind of like, not to be reductive, but like a funny walking simulator with puzzles.
Right.
It's an adventure game, but
for sure,
it kind of strikes me as a little bit more of like one of those games that you experience as opposed to play, which is, I'm totally fine with. But
I'm into this.
I'm glad that there was something like that.
Puzzle elements are barely there, honestly. It's mostly looking, interacting with things, seeing weird characters, experiencing the story around you. It's more about the setting and the vibe than it is about the actual game experience.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I find games like that to be fine. I know a lot of people don't. Yeah, it's a personal opinion matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna split that line of is it a game or is it not a game? And really, it boils down to did you enjoy your time with it? Is all that matters.
And I did.
Yeah.
Indeed. You go ahead, man. You got it.
All right. One kind of, again, I'm going to break the time thing a lot here.
Oh, well, then I can't let you do it. Jesus Christ. I'm still trying to keep that up.
But talking more about story and experience games, and I know Ryan played this game, and this is easily one of my favorite games of the year, was Always Sometimes Monsters. I adored that game.
That was that an RPG Maker game, or am I thinking of something else?
It was an RPG Maker game. It was. Definitely, aesthetically, it's not the most beautiful looking game, but it's more about the story and the choices that you make that determine whether or not you're kind of a good person at the end of the game. I don't know, there was a lot in that game that really kind of hit home for me and made me feel kind of uncomfortable with the decisions that you make, and I really don't want to do too many spoilers because I would highly suggest anybody who's into choice-driven narrative games to please go check out Always Sometimes Monsters, but I loved it. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think what was really cool about it to me was when it opens and you kind of like just pick who to talk to on the balcony, and that's how you actually choose like who the main characters are in it. I thought it was really cool like that. I also like I kind of I saw this as like a cart life type game that I actually understood how to play the game mechanics of, because in Cart Life. And I understand that this is the developer's intention, but I was kind of just like, my soul was crushed, and my guy was like starving to death and like deathly ill as a result of not eating and never making enough money, et cetera, et cetera. But it Always Sometimes Monsters is a little bit more traditionally gamey, which for me made it a little easier for the kind of ambitious narrative sort of to come across. But also some really cool like in-jokes about gaming media in there at times, which are really neat. I liked it a lot. I never finished it, but I got
really?
I got to Boston or wherever you go on the bus, and then I stopped and I was like, I'm gonna come back to this, and then I just
So you're about halfway through, I'd say, the game.
yeah, you know, it's the most entertaining rent-paying simulator that I played this year.
Speaking of indie RPG maker games that made you feel bad about yourself, Actual Sunlight earlier on this year. I don't know if you guys ever played that one. It was
Meant to. It passed me by, unfortunately.
it sounds kind of very similar to Always Sometimes Monsters, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I mean, obviously, I just kind of cracked that joke, but it does have a lot of similarities between those two. So I played it at PAX East in Boston, and I ended up sitting through the whole thing. It's only about an hour long, I think. And
You played the whole demo at PAX East?
I did, yeah. I just sat down. It was like, well, for real, like the reason I sat down to play it was because it was one of the booths that didn't have a line around the corner for people to play the game. Yeah. So I just sat down and I was just like, all right, well, we'll play this. And there's nobody waiting behind me, so I just ended up, going through the whole thing. And it was it's certainly an RPG Maker game, like it felt a lot like it was just kind of it was utilizing the platform of RPG Maker for the developer to more tell a story than to actually like create a game that would be revolutionary design wise. So it was particularly interesting. It's kind of depressing, but it's the kind of thing that I think a lot of people who like to be a little bit introspective would have gotten behind. So there's a little nod to that. Didn't even actually plan on talking about it, but then I remembered that happened to be another indie RPG Maker game. So there you go.
I have to go check that out.
Yeah, it's not bad. Again, diving back into the beginning of the year, though, there's one I definitely wanted to talk about. Our good buddy Dan Pierce, developer of 10 Second Ninja, which was...
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, fantastic platformer. See, early on in the year, man, you start to forget about these ones.
It's very true.
Mm-hmm. But it is a... Well, given the name of the game, you'd probably figure this out, but it's a very fast-paced platformer. You play as a ninja taking on evil robot Hitler, which obviously is probably drawn enough for most people. And it's surprisingly addictive, and it is very competitive too. I realized that shortly after the game actually fully released on Steam, the leaderboards began to immediately be filled with people that were putting up ridiculous times. And it's I think it's actually still got a pretty competitive scene. People are still beating each other's times, really just getting down to the millisecond of perfecting runs, which is it's pretty cool to see stuff like that. But you guys, I think all of you guys played 10 Second Ninja a little bit, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I really like that it's like a puzzle game basically dressed up as a platformer.
Yeah.
You don't get that until you start playing it for a while, and you're like, wait a minute, the only way to really do this is to absolutely min-max every option that I can take.
Right, yeah.
There are a lot of games that kind of come out in this vein that I end up describing as it's like Super Meat Boy, but worse. But that might still be okay. But 10 Second Ninja is one of the few that's it is a little Super Meat Boy-esque. I think that's in the stew somewhere, but it's its own thing, and it's really, really good on its own merits. Not just as kind of like playing 10 Second Ninja doesn't make me feel like I'd rather be playing Super Meat Boy.
Yeah.
Which is one of the best compliments that I can give a game.
Really, yeah. You were saying that as a joke, but really you could put that on your curator list as a completely valid recommendation.
Well,
yeah. I mean,
where you even get that whole premise is basically that it's got these little bite-sized levels and it controls really well, which are both fine. Mm-hmm. Those are positives. So that's the overlap for me anyway.
Yeah,
I think that was one of the when I made a video, that was one of the biggest praises I gave it, is that the controls were super tight and spot on,
absolutely.
and those are imperative for that type of game, and he nailed them, and I was very, very pleased when I was playing that game.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're going to optimize timing, you need controls for that. It's important.
Yep.
I haven't returned to it, and I kind of feel like it doesn't have that much staying power, but I also think it's $5.
Yeah, it is. Exactly $5
That was well worth it for the 3 hours or 2 hours that I put into it.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, $10 right now.
Oh, it's $10. All right. Some of those late game levels, I don't think I ever beat though. The ones that you unlock after you get...
oh, yeah, God, those were really difficult. It took a drastic difficulty spike from the last actual world to those extra levels. It was insane.
This is some Biznap levels at the end.
But another pretty difficult platformer that came out this year, back in June, was 1001 Spikes.
Okay.
Aben Hawkins, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
It was... This one, okay, I'm pretty sure this came out as a Flash game before the Steam release, and this is just kind of a reworked version of it, something along those lines.
It was on Xbox Live.
Xbox Live, okay, yeah, that's what it was. But yeah, it's a very, very difficult platformer. It's very deep. Like, there's a lot of levels, so that was fantastic. There's a lot of secrets involved with it too, so it ended up catching my interest. I think I have something like 85 hours in the game, which is incredibly surprising.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I did speed run it for a little while, so that explains it a little bit. But yeah, I loved it a lot. Did you guys enjoy 1001 Spikes? Ryan, I think you in particular probably had a great time with it, right?
I want Nick to talk about it.
Okay.
I don't know how much he actually played.
Wow.
But I got to the point where I tapped out, basically. The game made me tap out. I'll just admit it. I got to like the 4th or the 5th world, and I was like, I could understand, because when I had gone back through the worlds that I'd already done, and I could understand how that competence sets in pretty quickly. Because like the first world, at first you're like, oh my god, it can't get any harder than this. And then when you go back, you just do everything first try. But I couldn't do it. It's one of those games where I was like, I need to sit down and play this for like 4 hours in order to get this next like set of levels done, and I just never found the motivation to do so, which was a shame, because I was really enjoying it as well, and I think it does a really, really good job of being like a faithful graphical and audio recreation of like that era without being NES style, which is cool.
Yeah,
like
sure.
it's more like Amiga style.
That was one of the few series that kind of just disappeared off your channel. You were doing a series on it at one point. Were you
One of the few.
I was going to say, it doesn't particularly lend itself to YouTube Let's Play, unless, of course, you're Biznap and you're just a god. But I was going to say, too, there's a lot of other characters that you can play as. There's a Bit Trip Runner. There's a couple of other nods to other games as well. But yeah, it was awesome. It was a neat little indie action-adventure platformer that is difficult, according to popular user-defined tags for this product.
I didn't get nearly enough out of it that I wanted to, and it was only because other stuff kept coming out. I actually had played that game originally. It was on Xbox Live Indie Games, and I don't think I played it long enough to let it take like a hold of me, and I don't think I was quite invested enough in the concept of mastering 2D platformers yet. But now that I have all this Meat Boy experience behind me, I feel like that is really a game that I would absolutely love. I just didn't get too far in it even at this point because, like I said, other games started to take over. But I absolutely appreciate it. I thought it was great. I want to spend more time with it, and I probably will at some point. I just need to.
Yeah.
I'm so mad that Josh, like, beat it.
Yeah, Josh was really good at it, actually.
He was, yeah. I remember that.
I'm so mad about that.
Let's get to, maybe into a game that a lot of people didn't have many struggles with, and that's Sports Friends. Came out for the PS4, and is kind of a bundle of games made by I'm gonna butcher their pronunciation again, but it's Die Gut Fabrik. Die Gut Fabrik, yeah. Combination of Super Pole Riders, Bari Bari Ball, Johann Sebastian Joust, and I always forget the other one. Hakra was the other one.
Yes,
I love it. It is so much fun. It's a good time. Super Pole Riders, I think, is probably my favorite. We played a lot of this at PAX East, too. That was kind of our go-to booth. But it's a game that probably isn't going to sell 1 million copies, and that's because it's pretty much local multiplayer exclusive, which is another genre that's kind of, I guess, like much like Jazz Punk or a Proteus. It's kind of daring to launch a game like that into the stratosphere of the gamer universe, because it's not gonna, a lot of people aren't really playing local multiplayer anymore, which is kind of sad.
I have to say that I think there's been this narrative pushed, not in like a political sense, but I've seen it on like a lot of mainstream gaming websites that like, oh, thank God people are bringing local multiplayer back. Local multiplayer is like, it was dying and now it's being brought back. If you're in like the indie side, local multiplayer is fucking everywhere, man.
Yeah,
it's not
true.
It's all over the place. So like I do love Sports Friends. I like it a lot, and whenever we have people over, it's a go-to game like Towerfall, which I guess also came out this year on PS4. Maybe that might have been last year, but I don't necessarily buy the narrative that like it's, no offense, a brave decision to do it, but I agree that I like it.
What's your point, man?
I know that I'm trying to find my voice here. My point is, I would rather have no online multiplayer than bad online multiplayer. Cough, cough. Nidhogg.
Oh, yeah.
Such a shame.
We can talk about Nidhogg, right? Or was that 2013? I think that was this year, right? Wasn't
that was like this March, I think. or maybe January.
Oh,
but
January,
anyway.
yeah, just barely made the cut there.
I do not necessarily revere a game just for having courage to be local only, because there's so, like, this year we had like Samurai Gun, Towerfall, Sports Friends, Nidhogg was basically local only. And at some point I'm like, I don't know. I love the Sports Friends, but I really wish it was online. And I think that they've taken kind of a, not necessarily Dagoot fabric, but a lot of the developers have taken a contentious stance, which is like, well, like, we would ruin the game if we made it online. It's like, but if you did it, or like, I'm not saying it's easy, but if you did it,
just check the box, man. Check the box community.
We live in a day and age now where online multiplayer is just way more convenient for a lot of people as we move away from our friends that we grew up with in different parts of the country, or, you know, in an era where, like now, where I meet a lot of my friends online.
Yeah,
right.
I would like to play games with you guys where certain ones aren't able to do that because it's local only, and it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, Crawl's another one.
Oh yeah,
like,
Crawl. Mm-hmm.
Crawl is amazing, and if it had online multiplayer, even in its early access state, would be 100% easy to recommend. Any developers, even AAA developers, you're entitled to make whatever you want to make, and if you actually feel that it would compromise the vision to do online multiplayer, that's fine. But I don't know. We played a couple of games this year where it just sort of works. Like Goofball Goals works. I've played, you know, the Skullgirls works. That's a fighting game where latency is like a huge issue. I know that there's like middleware like GGPO that they can use for stuff like that as well. It makes it easier, but I don't know. For me, 2014 might be the year with like the highest concentration of games that I would love to put 200 hours in online, but instead I put in an hour a year when people come over.
Yeah.
That's the wrestling game we played, I can't remember the name of it now.
Oh, Gang Beasts.
Yeah, that was really fun, and I'm sad that we can't play it together because we live very far apart.
I think Gang Beasts and Crawl are. I know Crawl's doing this. I think Gang Beasts is doing it, but they're pulling like we might be able to do online, but we're not going to say yet.
Right.
So it would be awesome if that happened. I wouldn't say I'm cautiously optimistic, more like cautiously pessimistic, but it would be cool if it did happen.
It's a shame too, because like I don't get a chance to ever play Crawl again now because I'm not going to be able to play it with anyone. So that game's just gone for me.
More of the summer releases. I think this was one that was pretty much universally positive experiences. Shovel Knight.
By the way,
oh sorry,
Sports Friends is really good if you have people to play it with.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I think we got that message across. Yeah, Sports Friends is a whole bunch of fun. But yeah, Shovel Knight, retro 8-bit style aesthetic. It's got one of my favorite soundtracks of the year. It was absolutely fantastic, but it was. I think this was maybe the game that delivered the most on the amount of hype it generated all year long, like including Watch Dogs and all the AAA releases. Like, you know, I'm putting it up on that tier. I know, I'm doing it. But no, Shovel Knight, like it was hyped a tremendous amount, and it came out, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is exactly what we wanted you to make, and you did it, and it's fantastic."
It is one of those games that is going to be easily what a lot of people point to when they say this is what Kickstarter's for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was such a good experience. Like you said, the soundtrack was phenomenal. The aesthetics were great. The story was lighthearted and fun enough, but gripping enough where I wanted to see how it all ended. I just loved pretty much every minute I spent with Shovel Knight.
What I think I really liked about it was that it obviously is kind of, you know, it's putting on the nostalgia goggles a bit and saying like, oh man, remember how fun it was when we just had these 8-bit platformers. But it didn't rely on that, you know, like it made a good game on its own merits that just happened to be in the 8-bit aesthetic. And I think that was really what sold me on it from the get-go.
Yeah, the gameplay was actually just as sophisticated as the graphics in a weird way. And they look like they're low res, but then you kind of peel below the surface and there's actually a lot going on there. And I think Shovel Knight would probably be my favorite of the year, if not for the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about yet. Or they're probably on equal billing or something like that.
Project Zomboid?
Oh, yeah, that one.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd spent a lot of time not visiting the booths for Shovel Knight at the various conferences just because I didn't want to spoil myself on it, because it had a huge presence. And let's be honest, the hype levels were astronomical. And being someone who has a huge investment in caring about, 8, 16-bit style platformers, as I'm sure Ryan will attest, I didn't want to get myself into the wrong mentality when I went into that game. So when I played it blind. I played the entire game in one sitting, and I loved every minute of it with the exception of Propeller Knight, but that's because it's real hard.
Yeah.
And that's my fault. But yeah, that game is fantastic graphics, fantastic controls. The game is just overall a cohesive package. I can't praise it highly enough, honestly. That's probably one of my biggest recommendations for the year.
Yeah, and Ryan hasn't played it, so obviously he hates indie games. Moving right along.
Hey, actually, I've been talking to you guys about how this has been on my to-do list for quite some time, and we're running out of time to get it on the Game of the Year stuff. Yeah. So I started a new file on it last night, and I got through to like the second set of locks, so I beat like Polar Knight and I don't know what other ones were in there. But anyway, I don't know how much of the game is left. I'm enjoying it. I think I'm ruining it a little bit for myself by forcing myself to play it, because I find myself just kind of being like, oh, I'm just gonna, like grind this out. Like I'm
putting in your due diligence for it, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, like I'm doing homework sort of. Like I'm not breaking any of the checkpoints and like rolling the dice on that. And I'm very, very rarely going back to the towns to do stuff. But I'm enjoying it, and yeah, like visually, it is awesome, and the soundtrack is amazing, and it's got kind of a touching story going along with it as well. I like it. I like it a lot. I kind of wish that I played it more when it came out, because now I'm doing it to do it. It feels like an assignment, but it's a nice assignment as opposed to some other stuff. Yeah.
It's like your phys ed homework, right? As opposed to your English class.
Phys ed homework.
Hey, man, live in America.
I totally did 15 push-ups last night, teacher.
It was your calorie band.
You had those, right? You had the freaking sheets you had to take home, and you had to check off all your exercises you did that night. Am I the only one?
Did not have it.
You didn't have that? Oh man, no. I lived in a weird grade school then, I guess.
It's quite the honor system you got there.
Yeah, I mean, like we had that, and we had like the go home and read for 30 minutes, which I think is probably the more common one. But
yeah.
Anyway, another summer release that I don't know if we even have a lot to discuss about it, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention it. July of this year, Mount Your Friends, one of my favorite new multiplayer experiences, which is kind of a good example of one that probably would have suffered a bit from the local multiplayer aspect we were discussing 100%. Earlier.
It would have fallen into that category, and we probably would never be talking about it again, unfortunately, because it's a good game, for sure.
Absolutely.
The thing that burns me up about this, and it burns me up about I Am Bread as well, is that a lot of people, they have prejudice against the game based on the people that play it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, I gotcha.
So, like, this and I Am Bread, and Mount Your Friends in its current state is better than I Am Bread in its current state. But they get a bad rap because it's considered YouTube bait. But Mount Your Friends is like really mechanically solid and fun, and a surprisingly engaging multiplayer experience as well. Like it's surprisingly competitive and
right, yeah.
And I feel like if you just look at the marketing material and you're like, oh, the game's funny because there's like, sweaty men climbing on one another, then you're kind of missing the point. And I mean, that's
it's not the sweating men, it's the flopping dongs.
Right. Well, the dongs are a big part of it. But it's not like a joke of a game. Right. It's like a really mechanically sound
joke on top of a game.
Exactly. Yeah. The game is not a joke. The game is actually fun with a joke kind of wrapped around it.
It's one of those games I have not played yet. So
you haven't played Mount Your Friends?
I haven't. I've never played it.
It's a fun time,
one of those
man.
things I want to play with people, not play by myself.
Oh yeah,
by yourself? I think it's actually quite boring.
I would imagine it is.
I mean, no offense to Steger, who might be watching this video, but I like by myself. I'm just I usually, at least when I played it in its earliest iteration that actually came out on Steam, by the time I got to like the point where I was dying on a solo run, I wish that I had died earlier, because I don't want to climb my own tower for like 30 minutes and then I'm in 3,000th on the leaderboards. But it's a little bit it's been tweaked to be faster, I think. But don't write this off just because PewDiePie played it. I don't want to touch that. This is a game that has good mechanical strengths as well. It's fun.
Play with some friends. You'll have a fantastic time. Pretty much guarantee it.
Another one that we highly recommend playing with friends, pretty much you have to play with friends, Lethal League came out in August of this year.
Yeah.
Really good. Another one that is extremely competitive. I mean, this one you'd think a little bit more that, that's going to be a competitive game, but it has a It's got a pretty big community still around it too. A lot of people online. Anytime you hop online in this game, you got plenty of people to play against. But it's kind of a mix of I'm gonna forget what it was now. If anybody remembers what it was, it's like a Super Smash Brothers with bats, right? That's basically what we got here.
Well, it's like violent dodgeball.
Yeah, violent dodgeball. It's perfect with baseball bats.
Yeah. Lethal League, the online mostly works.
I was going to say, I have had success with it 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I'll get a match that just seems to stutter and then drop, or we'll get matched up and then it just won't. Nothing will happen. But most of the time, it happens. It works.
When it works fine, it works perfectly. Pretty much.
Yeah, actually, that was just
you have to quit.
That was what I was just gonna say. Like, if the biggest complaint I have is that occasionally it will crash, then yeah, that's pretty good praise for it. It is a really good multiplayer experience, but again, yeah, that's one that you definitely got to have some buddies with to fully enjoy.
I don't mean to shit on Lethal League, which I think is a good game and definitely worth buying, but I think Lethal League is kind of like a textbook example of a game that gets undue or disproportional praise because it is one of the few games of this type that actually has online netcode that actually works. And I don't want to beat that drum continuously, but I'm not like saying these indie developers are selfish or lazy. It's just disappointing that there's if Lethal League were not the only game like this that actually worked online, we would be playing like a lot of Sports Friends and Nidhogg and Samurai Gun, Towerfall on our streams and stuff. It's it just is what it is. But I think Lethal League gets a disproportionate amount of attention for actually working, and it deserves it, I guess, because it's one of the few that actually does. But it's also fun in its own rights as well.
Yeah. So you hear that, indie devs? You are the reason why Goofball Goals is still a prominent part of the NLSS.
Dude,
Congratulations.
Goofball Goals has its own meta, and it's freaking fantastic.
I feel like the netcode for Goofball Goals, like I can't even cite that as an example. I'm amazed that it just works considering how janky like the UI stuff is. But I feel like because it's not very fast paced, even if we had like a full second delay, it would still work totally fine for the most part.
I think the rule of thumb is the simpler the menu, the better the netcode works, right? That's just kind of the gist of it.
I can't even believe we're talking about Goofball Goals on like our favorite games. That game came out of nowhere, and it's freaking fun.
I don't even know. Did it even come out in 2014? There's videos.
That's when I became aware of it.
That's when I knew it existed.
All right.
I don't mean to antagonize developers with this because I understand. Well, I don't understand the intricacies, but I understand it's difficult to do it.
It's costly, too.
Yeah. That being said, games where the online works, Lethal League, Sports Friends, stuff like that, or not Sports Friends. Sorry, Speedrunners is what I meant to say. Those games they're getting more attention. Basically by having that feature, I think. So, it's not to say that Lethal League is necessarily a better game than Sports Friends, but it's a lot easier to play if you don't, live in a college dorm, basically.
Hey, before we go on, can I bring one up too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. I want to talk about Fract OSC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had a feeling... I didn't know if any of you guys have actually played it at all.
No, I remember watching you play it, though.
Mathis and I solved some puzzles working together.
Yeah,
Oh, that's cute.
We were both working on getting our video up and ready for it, and there was just a couple of parts where we had figured out the puzzle on our own, so we just swapped intelligence.
Yeah.
It's sort of a bonding moment when that happens. It's kind of what we do with Dark Souls as well. In a way.
Yeah.
Or Dark Souls 2. So the thing with Fract is I initially became aware of this game back when it was like 2012 or so, when there was just this really basic prototype of the thing, and it kind of looked like one of those like crazy fractal folders you'd get in high school from like 1995, overlaid with like a Myst-style puzzle system to it. It was one of the first videos I made for Indie Impressions, actually, back all that time ago.
Oh, wow.
And I had followed the game through its development. I always thought it was so interesting. There'd be these new screenshots, and it didn't even look like the same thing anymore. By the time the thing finally came out, it wasn't at all the same experience. What we ended up getting at the final bit of the development process was like a walk-through abstract music experience, which is not what I was necessarily expecting, but it actually came out even better, I think. It's got these crazy Tron-style visuals. It's kind of a sandbox in that you can approach puzzles in any way you want. Yeah. There's a whole non-linear exploration scheme to the whole thing, and it's just really beautiful and doesn't really look like much anything else I've ever seen. So in that respect, I have to definitely give it, my hat's off, because I really, really thought the visuals and the audio worked well together and just made an experience that are pretty much unlike anything else. And the puzzles are also pretty challenging as well as you get further into them. And I appreciate that there's various ways you can go. So if you get stuck, you go kind of like, hey, let's just go towards the green side now instead of the pink side. And, eventually you find your way through all of them. But the journey and the exploration in the process is really beautiful as well. So I just wanted to mention that was one of my favorites. I don't think it necessarily got a lot of representation, unfortunately, but I could tell a lot of work went into it, and just wanted to say, cool game.
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoyed my time with it. I didn't beat it, unfortunately, but I did spend a couple of hours with it. And what I played, I really enjoyed, and I thought it was a really cool experience. So I'm with you there.
It's got a cool look to it too.
It does. Of all the Nick games I played this year, this is one of the ones that was, I would say, most not acceptable, accessible to a non-Nick game player for the most part.
Yeah. Well, that and Jazzpunk probably, right?
Yes, this is they have a little bit more kind of a traditional type thing going on. There's a game element to it, and I'm not one of those guys who's like, oh, it's not a game. But
there's way more game in Frack than there is in Jazzpunk.
Mm-hmm.
Also true, yeah. I mean, the puzzles they're on screen. It's I thought it was pretty good. I didn't finish it because those games have a tendency to give me motion sickness, and this one did, as you might expect. But it was I had a decent time with it. Not my kind of thing, but I know a lot of people, including yourself, really really enjoyed it, and it tickled that kind of fancy that doesn't necessarily get kind of the attention that you might feel it deserves.
This is one of the least Nick games of the year,
or one of the best Nick games of the year for a non-Nick game player. If this is a women's category,
oh god, that would be.
It would be best Nick game. Best Nick game if you're not Nick.
Like, I'm aware that there's a limit, right? Like, that not everybody's into those kind of games. And I think that, those are the accessible ones. Those are the ones that welcome you in, that are not necessarily, like, confronting you with explosions of psychedelic insanity. Like, it is psychedelic, but not in that way. It's there because it's part of the thematic experience. It fits the art style.
Yeah.
It's not trying to confront you with something. It's just the way it is.
And it's puzzle based, so you know you're never at a loss. One of the things I have trouble with these games is like, what am I supposed to be doing? And most of the time, I kind of feel like the game's like, you're not supposed to be doing anything, man. Just let it happen. It's Proteus.
Exactly. Putting you down.
Yeah.
This is a bit more. Well, it's a lot more gamey than Proteus. So even if you're not into that kind of like psychedelic stuff, and I don't know if you are, you should appreciate the kind of architecture.
Proteus had a message, though. Proteus had a message. I don't think anybody even realizes it.
I for sure didn't.
One of my top 10 games of that year.
Fantastic. Good for you. I appreciate it. I like Proteus a whole bunch.
Are you playing the game, or is the game playing you, man?
Proteus, but after I played about 45 minutes of it, I was like, can't do it. Just
Did you finish it?
I don't know. I got to the end of several seasons.
There's an end, though.
I drifted away.
I couldn't get around just chasing bunnies all the time, man. That was the entire game for me.
There were some bunnies involved.
It relaxed the hell out of me. That's why I played it. It just was nice and relaxing.
All right, another summer release. Yeah, no, we're good. I was gonna try to take the route of another musical release in the form of Crypt of the NecroDancer, which is still in early access, but is getting overwhelmingly positive reception, of course, and so deserved. Did you guys play a lot of NecroDancer? Have you played a lot of NecroDancer?
I did 12 episodes of NecroDancer.
There you go.
It
was available at the time.
Yeah. But it's got a fantastic Danny Baranowski soundtrack. You may know him from the original score of The Binding of Isaac. And I really enjoyed it. It's actually still getting a lot of huge updates. There's an entire new zone in the works that he's going to release at some point. Nice. But it's...
I have, you bringing up the game, put the music immediately back in my head.
Yeah.
The shopkeeper music is so good.
It's real good.
It is. Yeah.
Joins in.
It's fantastic,
Right.
man.
Did you, even though you didn't play much of it, did you get a lot of Crypt of the NecroDancer at your house?
Yeah. Kate was part of the charity Necrothon.
Yeah,
so for 2 weeks, the developers from Brace Yourself Games, they're Vancouver locals, so they gave us one of the Crypt of the NecroDancer dance pads so Kate could compete in the tournament. So she played probably 6 to 7 hours a day for 2 weeks.
Oh my god.
So this is it's unfortunate because this is my kind of game. One of the reasons I've kind of stayed away from it is because it's difficult to talk about it and play it at the same time because of the fact that it's rhythm based. But I'm sick of it, and I have by second hand sick of it. I really when it comes out and it's full release, I'll probably return to it. But I really do need kind of a refractory period where I can be because I'm so sick of it. Like even it brings up almost like PTSD for me when I see the dance pad. I'm like,
oh my god, I know exactly what you mean. Every streamer on my follow list was playing that game, and I was watching all of the streams. So the music just got so ingrained into my
you
mind.
bring up the game, and I just hear I'm like,
Yeah.
And I never even played it myself, but I still kind of know what you mean. Like I just kind of need to wait.
Yeah, for sure.
Kate really likes it, and I watched her play a lot of it, and the game looks super good, and the soundtrack is amazing. The mechanics are cool. I will play it at some point. I just need some time because it was seriously like I almost felt like I was married to the developer for a while. It's just like 100 hours over the course of like 3 weeks, constant like click clacking from the living room, and it wasn't hard.
Frustration.
I wasn't being tortured, but it made me not want to play it for a while.
She was determined, man. She really wanted to place. She was doing well, too.
She was. Yeah. She's a lot better at it than I am.
Yeah. I agree. Moving forward. I'm getting kind of into the tail end of the year here. We're getting into the fall and winter releases. Were there any that I might have missed earlier on you guys wanted to bring up, or no?
I would mention, and I don't know if this is contentious to mention, but it's not out yet, but I've been playing it since September, Cavern Kings, a game that I've really liked quite a bit. It's if you're not familiar with it, anybody listening, it's sort of a roguelike picture, I guess Super Crate Box meets Spelunky, only minus the adventuring moments, so it's a very fast-paced game with power-ups and also a little bit of Risk of Rain in there as well. So it's always trying to get yourself as powerful as possible when you fight a boss at the end of however X meters below the ground you get, then you progress further and further, and it goes on forever until you die. But it's a game that I found very, very addictive and still being put together. There's still a lot of stuff that's coming together, but I've had a lot of time with it, and I still love playing it. So hopefully it does make some big waves when it comes out.
I actually meant to check that out because I watched you play it, Nick, and it looks pretty damn good. So
it plays very well.
Hoping to jump on it. Was Mercenary Kings this year?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I like Mercenary Kings.
It came out in like February or something like that.
Did you
Mercenary
play a lot?
Kings, I played a few hours of it. Visually, it looks so good.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of that other old
Metal
game.
Slug.
Yes, Metal
Yeah,
Slug.
Metal
But
Slug,
it's like,
yep.
but it's deceptively like Metal Slug because it's freaking Monster Hunter is what it is.
I got my problem with the game was that I got really ground down after a couple of hours of just going back into the same maps and doing like the same objectives of
That's where the Monster Hunter comes in.
It's exactly the same problem that I have with Monster Hunter, which
it's a grind game for gear is what it is, and I didn't know that right away, and it took me by surprise. It eventually grew on me because I kind of enjoy Monster Hunter a lot.
Yeah.
But it's very deceptive. It doesn't look like a Monster Hunter grindy game, but that's exactly what it is. You go out, you do the same missions over and over and over again for better gear, better loot, and then you can modify your weapons to be better so you can do harder missions and get better stuff.
I'm much more of a, when it comes to like side-scrolling action games, I'm much more of like a Contra type guy, which is what I or Metal Slug, which is what I kind of thought this would end up being, especially given the visual reminiscence. Not that they're beholden to make it like Metal Slug because it looks like Metal Slug, but yeah. By the time I got around to like the fourth mission of like rescue 7 POWs on the same map, I was like, mechanically, it just wasn't interesting enough for me to overcome the fact that the objectives were repetitive.
It's really really fun when you play a multiplayer.
Yes, also online multiplayer that works.
Yes, correct.
And it was free on PS Plus, and I don't think it's bad. I just don't think it's incredible. I think it's cool. It's the kind of, it reminds me a little bit of like Left 4 Dead in that you could get a couple of friends together and play this and just be like, yeah, we're just having a good time playing video games.
Yep.
I probably wouldn't play it by myself, but together with people, I had a really fun time with it. So
Right.
This is another one of those, I guess.
Another one I'd be remiss to have missed out on the opportunity for you guys probably to talk about. Well, I don't know, actually. In this group, who has played Transistor from the creators of Bastion?
Played it, haven't beaten it, though.
I did beat it.
You did beat it?
In 2 sittings.
Ooh.
Yes.
That's high praise, maybe?
Did you beat it, Bear?
I didn't beat it, no.
I love that my Google image search for Transistor is just like a bunch of transistors. I like Transistor, but my take home from it was, if there was only like one emotion that was a take home from it, it is a little bit of disappointment because it feels so similar to Bastion. Yeah. And I still get people to this day that are like, Yo, it's totally different from Bastion. You're entitled to your opinion. I think you are high as hell. Yes, you know, it's got like this kind of like pausable real-time battle system, which is pretty neat. Totally different aesthetic. It's got like a real like Final Fantasy VII type architecture thing going on that I really like actually. But it just feels to me like a futuristic version of Bastion, which is great. But also at the same time, I was kind of hoping it would, you know, it would make me excited in the same way that Bastion did. It feels almost like a pseudo sequel to me. So I liked it, but I think, and I really like the narrative structure of the game where like after the first boss, you have like a hit list. I really like when games do that and kind of give you like the game plan for the rest of the game. Right. I thought that was cool. But I ended up being like, yeah, this is cool. It's moody. It really hits I think the notes it was going for, but I didn't like it enough for it to probably place on my own year-end stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I thought the art style was very pretty. I felt like the gameplay was a bit one note. I kind of felt like I understood everything that was going to happen for the next however many hours in the first hour or so, which is maybe a little bit of a turnoff for me, but it was pretty enough that it made me want to play more. I just kind of puttered out on it is all.
It is quite short as well, which you can take that as either a negative or a positive. I kind of appreciated that it was a little bit efficient in the time it took to play it, and I don't think it didn't seem to me that it rushed it, but a lot of people I did see complaining like, it kind of feels like they rushed the last part of the game. But it's only about
4 to 5 hours, right? Yeah, 4 to 5 hours.
I should clarify before the commenters get upset with what I just said. It's just that I think I didn't like the battle system personally. It felt kind of simple in a way. I appreciate that you could do the real-time or the turn-based. It's kind of cool, but I think it's just something that wasn't for me.
I want to believe that the people that have invested over an hour into this video so far are not the kind of folks that are going to give you shit for that. But maybe they are.
I'm used to clarifying things now, though.
Yeah. They also have like a really cool New Game Plus type mode, which I'm trying to remember exactly what it did mechanically, but it wasn't just like, here's tougher enemies. I think they actually had like enemies that only appeared on New Game Plus, and of course there's like a ton of customizability like there was in Bastion. Like you can add different kind of, I don't know what they called them, but I'm going to call them viruses. You could add like virus processes onto yourself to make the game harder and get greater rewards, just like you could in Bastion with the totems or whatever they were called. But
right.
I really hope, no disrespect meant to the narrator, Logan Cunningham, but I really hope the next game maybe doesn't do like a isometric third-person action-adventure game with
narrated by Logan Cunningham, right? Yeah.
If that's going to be their thing, that's cool. But I think I'm getting a little. Transistor's making me realize that if I played one of those every couple of years, I'd be burnt out on it pretty quick.
They've got kind of the behemoth kind of thing going on, where the behemoth, you can definitely tell this is a behemoth game, and now we're starting to get to the point where this is a the name of the developer has slipped my mind now. Supergiant. Supergiant games, yeah. But, okay, so getting later on into the year here, we're starting to come into the third and fourth quarter. One that I wanted to make a quick note of is the vanishing of Ethan Carter. I don't know if you guys had a bunch of experience with this one.
Unfortunately, never played it.
Anybody else?
I'm intending to play it.
Me too.
Towards the end of the year.
Okay, so I'm the only one, so I'll talk about it. Ethan Carter, I think, well, first of all, I want to say that this was one of the most absolutely beautiful games I played all year. And you guys can probably tell, too, just like looking at screenshots, looking at videos of it, it's stunningly gorgeous. And it's an indie game, which blew my mind. Like, I think this is better looking than any game I played. But it's not exactly revolutionary gameplay-wise or anything like that, but I really enjoyed the detective aspect of things. They kind of took a different approach to the detective work, which I thought worked out really well. And the story itself is an exceptional story. I think that was probably the strongest point of the game, and that's saying something considering how much I just gushed over the graphics. But I think the story of this game was something that really set it apart. I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I think you guys probably will too. But yeah, if you guys go for it.
The reason I want to play this is because a few times every year I want to play something that's kind of like quiet and slow, and previously what I'd been using for that is Telltale stuff. And in kind of like a counterintuitive way, Telltale put out so much stuff this year that I'm like, I can't keep up with that. So I'm gravitating towards the vanishing of Ethan Carter because it's been critically well regarded, and also it's standalone. So I don't feel like there's a lot of pressure like there is with other episodic games where like, man, you know, I could sit down and play like episode 1 of The Wolf Among Us, but then I got to put in like 8 hours at some other point. I kind of appreciate that it's like this is a self-contained story. I I heard it was like 4 to 5 hours long.
Yeah,
or
I finished
like
it
that.
in one stream, so
yeah,
too long.
and then I'll then I can just be like that's fine.
There you go. All right, I think we're getting closer to the elephant in the room here. It might be time to talk about it.
I want to bring up one from late spring that I think we missed, but I think we all played and is a little contentious. But I definitely in my year-end coverage, Gods Will Be Watching is going to factor in.
I think I might have subconsciously left that off my list.
So Gods Will Be Watching is it's a game that a lot of people hate, like a lot. There's actually been a pretty, I wouldn't say violent, but extreme reaction to the game, mainly due to the fact I think that you can have really negative consequences that are determined by probability or random chance. Basically.
Right. Yeah, that'd be my biggest complaint about the game.
You guys go ahead because I think I'll be a slightly dissenting opinion.
Okay. Well, first of all, I should say I didn't really have a terrific experience with it. I can appreciate what it brought to the table. I like the difficulty level. I'm not like angry about it being so hard. Because I got to the point, I'm hoping I'm not spoiling too much, but there is a mission. Actually, you know what? No, yeah, I can't talk about that. But but there's just some instances where it just kind of feels like you're kind of forced to do some stuff that you really wouldn't like to do. But it was exceptionally difficult. I ended up getting through the 4th mission on my first try, which was remarkable by any stretch of the imagination. But
as the desert mission?
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. I got one try on that. I was blown away because everyone was telling me, like, get ready to spend 3 days trying to get through this shit. But I got to the point where at the end, I just kind of felt like I'd put a lot of investment into this, and the softening of the blow at the end there was just kind of a letdown for me. I think the mixed opinion is probably the best description of my experience with Gods Will Be Watching, because I can appreciate it for what it was, but it wasn't really something that stood out to me as one of my favorite experiences of the year.
I would be in the group where I would say I'm probably slightly more positive about the game. The aspect that I think a lot of people didn't like is that you can fail due to the game, just the probability.
They'll just screw you over, yeah.
Yeah, and that I wouldn't call that good game design, because you could put in a lot of effort into this one level and then the game just screws you because that's just how the dice rolled. That ripping away power from the player and just saying you lose does not a good game make. Yeah, and I
have to point out that the screenshot that I put up on screen for this is really great. It's like the level where you're in kind of like the frozen planet, and Sergeant Burton says, "Pull yourself together. Marvin's death will allow us all to live." But he's just surrounded by dead bodies.
That really is. That's an all-encompassing image of Gods Will Be Watching.
He's like screaming at himself.
Slapping himself. Pull yourself together, you bastard!
It's him and like the deactivated robot, and then just like corpses surrounding him.
That's real good. So were there any others?
Wait, hey,
he's not done.
Oh, my bad.
I want to defend Gods Will Be Watching somewhat.
Oh, I didn't think we were going to give that any floor, but all right, there you go.
I don't want to say anything as condescending as like, hey man, that's what real life's like. You know, you could have an 80% chance of success and then something could backfire, because that's a bullshit attitude to take. My main problem with the game is a combination of the fact that you can fail a mission due to probability and no fault of your own, and there's no like mid-chapter save points. And some of these missions are like an hour long, sometimes even close to more than that. So you could end up just like having a bad dice roll and then replaying and wanting to do exactly the same actions, which I think is really a poor design decision. But that being said, I found myself engaged and I finished the whole game. I think the story's a little janky and grammatically a little bit messed up sometimes. Like, you can tell that it's not really written by someone whose first language is English, which is fine, but it does compromise, you know, the kind of stuff that happens in the story, because sometimes there's errors that make you think that something's happening that's not really happening.
Right.
And like when people start glitching out, you're like, wait a minute, is that like a glitch or is that like what's actually happening in the game?
Is that supposed to happen or not?
But as a self-contained series of puzzles or a self-contained series of puzzle games, I thought it was pretty cool, and I like it as like a resource management game that doesn't give you a UI. Like the UI is all represented on like background objects and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool. Visually cool. Soundtrack is off the chain. Really, really good. And you know, I can't really offer anything intellectually to defend why I like the game so much. I found myself enjoying it a lot, and even after I failed a mission, I was never really frustrated. I was mostly just like, let's do it again. You know, I play a lot of games that are hard and fuck you over in ways that are similar to the way Gods Will Be Watching fucks you over, and there's nothing you can do about it. So yeah, I guess I've got the calluses built up there, but I can understand why this is a game that is polarizing, and a lot of people violently dislike it because it doesn't really have respect for the player. You know,
right.
You got a 4 out of 5 chance to do something and it fails, and then you got to start over from 45 minutes ago.
I just remember my first time booting the game up, I didn't understand it was turn-based, and I thought it was all happening in real time, and I was panicking the whole time. I'm like, how am I supposed to do all of this?
And that, in response to like some of these criticisms, they put it in a narrative mode, which is basically just like easy mode. But I don't actually think the story is strong
enough to warrant.
Yeah.
Like, if you're just going to play it through to experience the story, I honestly don't think it's necessarily worth it, but I actually like it on a mechanical level enough to recommend it and look back fondly upon it.
Yeah. I wonder if it'll spawn other games of a similar nature, because I thought when I found the LD version of it, and that's all I'd gotten to play, which is why I wasn't really commenting on that, I just really liked the idea. I liked the way it came together. I liked the visual feedback. I liked the management style to it. And the consequences are very dire when you screw up, and I like that that's a thing that's reinforced. But as you mentioned, it does sound very frustrating, though, to have to replay a large section of the game just because the game decided you did something wrong you didn't do.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah. So, seeing people react to that is what kind of made me not pursue the full game, even though I like the original.
Right. And, like, I don't even know if I can recommend it, honestly. It's just, it's very polarizing, and if you can handle having to play through an hour-long mission again from the beginning after losing a 95% chance to succeed on your like final objective, then by all means.
Sounds like XCOM.
Yeah, something like that.
A little bit.
Dude, even Isaac has that happen.
You're going to hit this enemy, 95% chance, and then just shoots into the sky. It's like, well, that's how you're going to miss.
Yeah.
The thing that makes it, the thing I think that made it palatable to do it over again is that it's not, if you tackle it like from a cold, calculated puzzle game standpoint, as if you were just looking at like a series of math equations, I think you'll be like, I was 80% of the way through solving that equation. That's bullshit that I have to do it again. Yeah. But if you actually do, if you're apt to, or you allow yourself to be somewhat emotionally invested, or at least invested in the tension, then you feel that, and that draws you back. But if you're just playing it to solve it, then you're probably not going to get that much, you're going to get anti-value out of it. You're going to get frustrated.
Yeah, that actually does speak volumes to me, because I got to the point where I was on the final mission, and I got a lot of shit for this, too, because I was just skipping through it because I had played through it, like, just the final mission. Yeah. I think I played through it like a dozen times. I was so tired of it. I was just like, please, just fucking, I don't give a shit anymore. Just let me get to the end of this process. But I think that was all I had for the first half of the year. We're getting into, I think, the final couple on my list. If you guys had any other ones you want to mention real quick.
Goat Simulator?
I didn't really want to talk about Goat Simulator, no.
All right, then we don't have to.
Anybody got anything to say about Goat Sim?
I shit all over that game, and I got yelled at for it from my commenters. So
I liked it. I thought it was goofy, irreverent, and just a silly, fun time, and kind of reinforced the fact that games don't have to be anything that they don't have to be.
They don't have to work.
I mean, I didn't want to hate on it by saying I didn't want to talk about it. I just literally have nothing to say about it. So that was.
Wait, did yours not run properly or something?
No,
it's a broken physics game, is what it is. Like,
that's what's charming about it, though.
I disagree. I think it's terrible because of that, and I think it's sold because it's a broken game, and it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, I get it. It's supposed to be funny because it's a broken physics engine, but at the same time, that doesn't make the game fun, at least to me, and I understand everybody's going to have a different opinion. But just because you acknowledge your game is broken does not make it a good game automatically, and that was my argument with it.
Wait, but I think the problem is that you're trying to look to figure out if it's good or bad, and I don't think it has to necessarily exist in one of those two. I think it can just be good for individuals that find it fun. Like, I would not give this a recommendation and say, like, I think everyone should buy this. I don't. I think people who like silly physics should buy this, and I do.
And it sits in that one-note joke, right? It's just the same joke for an hour, and certain people are going to get longer entertainment out of it, but I found it hilarious for 5 minutes. I was like, okay, I get it. I get the joke.
Yeah, I guess fundamentally, I look for this kind of thing in games, so to find it sort of handed to me on a silver platter, I was like, oh man, I have a lot of fun I could have in this.
Yeah, well, I know, Ryan, you did a video on it too. What were your thoughts?
I have no problem with Goat Simulator as a game. It wears its heart on its sleeve quite clearly. My problem was the reaction of some people, specifically not Nick, but the reaction of some people who
not Nick.
Whenever they were presented with like someone who doesn't like Goat Simulator, are like, "Oh, you don't get it. It's the easiest thing to get in the world."
That's what I hated. Like my comment section filled up of, you just don't get it. It's like, no, I fucking get it. I just don't like it.
I get it too hard for you. That's what it is.
and also like oh, you take yourself too seriously. That's not it.
It's not about that at all. You don't have to make a big value judgment about someone's personality. It's just a thing you either like or you don't like. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm more on Mathis's side, where I played for like. I played for probably about 45 minutes, and I did some jumps, and I got like one or two of the transformations, and I was like, I have no interest in playing more. I get it. I think you give it a little too much credit, saying it was funny for 5 minutes, but I
know what I meant.
It's by the time I had played like 2 minutes of it, I was like, this is a game that I'm not going to like.
Yeah. I know they've supported the crap out of it, though. There's like a new area and like an MMO mode.
Yeah, they make the MMO mode.
I have actually heard that the MMO mode makes it a little bit more interesting, but I'm content to let Goat Simulator attract the audience that Goat Simulator has already attracted, and I'm aware that it is just not for me. And to the company's credit, they sent me a message after my video went up, and they're like, "Hey, sorry that Goat Simulator is not your thing, but we get it." And
cool.
I hope that more. It doesn't seem like people are so emotionally invested one way or the other in Goat Simulator right now. Anyway,
yeah, I think that has a lot less polarization than something like Gods Will Be Watching for sure.
Sure.
Yeah. I think it's a game. I appreciate
the level-headed reasoning that we're all doing here, because I know this stuff tends to get into very polemic territory very quickly, and no reason.
Again, I don't think anybody has the right to say you don't deserve to like this or you don't deserve to not like it.
Right.
It's just
people say that.
Of course they do, but it doesn't matter. Like, if you enjoyed it, fine, you enjoyed it, but it's definitely not going to be for everybody.
I guess one of the reasons it was kind of contentious was because it was such a popular game. It was like a top seller on Steam for weeks. And then it was one of those games where whenever it goes on sale, like below 10%, it always gets back into the top 10, which is fine. I honestly, I don't feel that for me, the joke is worth $5. I think it's $10 normally. But if you're the kind of person who, you play it and you like, that seems like it would kind of be my thing. I think there's a demo too. I can't remember. But then sure, why not, right?
Indeed.
It's silly fun. I like turning my character into Shrek sometimes. That's fun
too. Speaking of top sellers, I don't know if we even had a lot of experience with this, but it was indeed one of the more popular indie releases of the year in the form of Divinity.
Divinity Original Sin is super excellent. I loved that game. Did you play it, Bear?
I played a little bit of it. Yeah, I couldn't really get into it. I don't think it's just, like, I like RPGs in general, but I think just that particular form of RPG.
It is a Baldur's Gate style RPG.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
Yeah, it's incredibly deep. From my understanding, I still haven't beaten it. I've put many hours into it so far. From my understanding, it's over 100 hours long.
Oh God.
It's one of those games that you can play solo or co-op, and you get equal amounts of enjoyment out of both. One of the difficult things I thought for them to do was the co-op conversations, right? Who's going to be in charge of the conversation? Who's going to be in charge of deciding who says what? Because in this type of RPG, your decisions will determine how a quest ends or how a storyline branches off in what way or another. And one of the things I think they did really well, I don't know if you actually played co-op at all, Bear, but if you get into a conversation and you're playing with somebody, say you're playing you want to play an intimidating character and the other person wants to play a charming character, when you both decide what you want to say, there is a rock, paper, scissors game that happens.
Oh, nice.
First person to get to 10 wins, and say you have 4 points in Intimidate and he has like 3 points in Charm, every time you win a round of rock, paper, scissors, you gain 4 points or she'll gain 3 points.
Oh, that's cool.
And then the first to 10 will determine what gets said to the NPC.
Yeah, I like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is creative.
It is a very
cool game.
It's a very cool idea. And then, of course, combat. There's a ton of interactive spells and melee moves, so you can like light your friend's sword on fire, so you can do fire damage. You can like splat down like a puddle of oil rather, and set that on fire. There's a lot of cool combinations you can do with the combat. It's very good.
This game, if this had come out 3 or 4 years ago, I'm convinced I definitely would have just poured my time into it. It just kind of sucks because this is just we're all of us are in a position right now where there's so many games that come out. It's just very difficult to invest a ton of time into a game that really does require you to, you know, become heavily vested in the characters and the storyline and the gameplay itself and all that.
Exactly what I was thinking too. And I was invited to play this so many times, and every time I was like, I have so many other things. I just can't get myself into that position where I could be open to that many hours of time.
Right.
And I couldn't find anything about it I didn't like. I just didn't get to play it.
Yeah, it's just so long.
Yeah,
That's why I stayed away too. Is it's one of those games that it's intimidating because it's huge and it wears that kind of like we're old school and hardcore stuff like on its sleeve, and you know, dice rolls and like your stat points being, you know, necessary for those dice rolls and
Tons
stuff like
of
that.
secrets.
yeah.
After playing Dragon Age all the way through and kind of getting reacclimated to RPGs, I've been meaning to start Divinity, but it is the kind of thing, it's like the opposite of The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, where I'm like, this is going to be a huge time investment. And like, I'm like, am I really going to, like, when am I going to finish Divinity Original Sin if I start it? Is it worth playing if I'm not going to finish it? Like, I don't know.
How many hours did you put into Dragon Age?
Probably 40, 45.
Okay, yeah, so it's like more than double that.
It was relatively light, but Dragon Age was also a huge game that I just kind of, it gave you the freedom to be like, if you want to finish it in 40 hours, you can finish it in 40 hours.
Yeah, or you can take 100 hours. Or whatever.
You could put 150, 200 if you want to collect all the elf fruit in the world.
right.
That would
Look,
be
man,
neat.
all I'm saying is, if you ever want to play Divinity co-op, I will play with you.
Hit math is up. Another one that I think kind of falls in the same vein of Divinity, another one that actually topped the Steam bestseller list for a long time when it came out too, Wasteland 2.
Another one I want to get into, but I never had the time for that one.
Yeah, very much a fan service game. Had a huge Kickstarter, few $1 million. In fact, I'm pretty sure came as a result of it. But it was. I had a chance to play a little bit of it. I did it for GOG actually. I did a little stream for them. But it is. It's very deep. It's certainly exactly what Wasteland players wanted in Wasteland.
It's
2.
even more old school than Divinity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's got everything about like early 90s PC gaming kind of brought to a modern sense. Like that's exactly what you can expect from Wasteland 2. Did you guys play it at all?
The developer sent me a code and I just never had the opportunity.
Yeah. Again, it kind of felt like one of those games that just you'd have to really invest a hell of a lot of time into.
It's like, go ahead and do a video on it. I'm just like, when do I feel like I know enough about the game to do a video on an RPG that's 70 hours long,
Right.
Wasteland 2 is one of those games that it is very common on Kickstarter where I'm like, that is so not for me.
Yeah.
I feel like half the stuff that makes it through on Kickstarter is like, this is a sequel to a hardcore PC game from like the late 80s and early 90s that I didn't play. So that also goes for, a Freelancer reboot or Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous and stuff like that. For the most part, I'm smart enough to know, where I should put my efforts based on what my experience and skill set is, except when I had a full boyfriend. And
Dude, that game gets really weird later.
Oh man, I almost forgot to bring that one up too.
Okay, all right, I apologize.
It gets weird.
How far did you get into it?
Like an hour tops.
Okay, so it goes from dating simulator to murder mystery about halfway through.
Really?
Yeah,
You become the one true pudding. I don't know if you are interested in that, but
like I know it starts strange, but the game totally changes halfway through.
And what I think I like it a lot. as a result of that. Like, I don't want to play it again at all. I've played it and I've experienced that, and I'm just like, all right, cool. That was right on, man. There you go. Yeah, but it was certainly something, and I'm glad. Again, like, I feel like Adult Swim games almost. Oh wait, no, that was Devolver Digital, wasn't it?
Yeah, that
was a Devolver game. Devolver and Adult Swim, I think, are kind of in the same vein here, but I'm so glad that they exist to put out stuff like this, because we need it still.
One of their games that I loathed or anything. I always had some amount of fun with their games.
Broforce, actually, another one that they put out this year. That was a really good time.
The game's so much fun.
It is. Not even a lot to say about that. Suffice to say, it was a good time. And they put out the Expendabros expansion for free, so if you don't even need the base game for it, if you want to try out Broforce.
Just don't tell North Korea about the game, that's all.
Yeah, of course. All right, I think I've got like one more little one I want to make mention of before we dive into the obvious one. But 6180 The Moon. I don't know if you guys even heard of this, let alone played it, but it kind of came out.
I have, but I haven't played it.
It kind of came out stealthily on Steam. I was looking at the new releases one day, and I was like, oh, what's this? And I happened to just buy it, and I played through it all in one sitting, and it was a really awesome, unique experience. Soundtrack was fantastic, and I failed to mention this earlier too. Kind of feels like the year of indie soundtracks, doesn't it? There's just a crap load of games. Good
feeling to have.
Yeah, like Shovel Knight, freaking, what was the other one? I had a few, and now I can only think of Shovel Knight. So I guess it really wasn't that good. But NecroDancer, yeah, that was the other one. But yeah, 6180 The Moon. It utilizes a pretty neat mechanic of screen wrapping. So in lieu of normal platforming, you kind of have to take both sides of the platform into account, and the level design was stellar. Nothing is too difficult, but there's quite a bit of variety in the gameplay, so I really enjoyed that one. It's only like $4 too, so highly recommended there.
I assume the big one is what everybody plays right now.
Yeah.
I have two that I want to talk about before we get there then.
Okay.
One I know 3 out of the 4 of us played, and we'll tap that one now, is This War of Mine.
Yep.
I beat it. I don't know if anybody else beat it. It took me a few tries, but that is probably one of my top 3 games of the year. I loved my time with that game.
I completely agree with that. I'm actually planning on making an entire video detailing my thoughts on the game, because I feel like I have a lot to say about it. But yeah, again, I'll just agree and say it's stellar. I can't recommend it enough. Very, very, very good game.
Once you understand the mechanics, it's not an incredibly difficult game, but the atmosphere and the story that's kind of being told as you play never really lets up, so I never really got bored with it, which is something good. It's good, because I'd say the last 10 days of the war on my playthrough, there wasn't really anything I could do or anything I needed to do to survive. I kind of just almost waited the days out, but it didn't stop me from being excited to see what was going to happen the next day, and I really loved my time with it.
And something else I noticed too, when I started to play it, I've kind of taken an intentional mental note of this, as I've realized it happens more and more with games that I intend to play to see whether or not they'd be worth, like investing into a series or something like that. And when I jumped into This War of Mine, I noticed that I got into it, and it didn't really provide any sort of much of a tutorial or anything, but it was very intuitive in how to progress. It did a really good job of, guiding you without guiding you, I guess is what I want to say, into the best ways to approach all the different situations.
Yeah, everything made sense pretty quickly.
I really do like This War of Mine. My intention for how to play it was to just have that one playthrough, because I agree. I played a little bit of the pre-release version, and that in some ways kind of soiled my first experience with the release version, because I knew the basics of what to do.
Right.
And I think it is a game that works a little bit better if you're trying to get like the narrative experience instead of just the mechanical experience. It's better if you don't know what you're doing, because you flounder and things go wrong and people die, and that leads to more kind of emerging gameplay and cool stuff that happens. But I kind of got derailed by the 2 bugs that I got hit with in a row, where one was like, if you bring a bottle of moonshine with Katya to the market, the world's your fucking oyster. Like, you come back with like as much, you like, hey, I've got a bottle of moonshine here. Can I have like all of your medicine? And they're like, yeah. Like, come back with a bigger backpack next time. And then the next time I went to the market, they just shot at me, because I don't know, the market was super bugged. So if people keep, if this is for the people who have made it this far, here's your reward. People keep asking what's going to happen to this war of mine. They just announced, or they just released a new update to the game today that allows you to pick your starting hideout, and you can pick your starting composition of people, which a lot of people were complaining about. They're like, we always get Bruno, Katya, and Pavel. Like, I would like to mix it up a little bit. So that's cool that they're doing that, and I'm glad that the game is done well. I'm intending to go back to it. I may or may not record it, but I do want to see it through to the end because I feel like I've got this kind of like this specter kind of like haunting me right now. But I want to do it now that the bugs are fixed and it feels like a little bit more of an authentic playthrough.
As long as you don't start with Anton, you're good.
Anton's like the math genius, right?
The math genius,
Yeah,
aka the most useless of all.
What practical bonus does he?
So his practical bonus is when the metal traps that you can catch food with. If you have him do it, they'll catch food a little bit faster.
That's amazing.
Because he's like really good at calculus.
Yeah, it makes no sense. But
the perfect angles, I guess.
He's useless, and every time you let him into your house, he comes in with like needing bandages and medicine every time, and you're like, dude, I have like one of each. Why do I want to use them on you?
He's been catching wild animals with protractors all day, man. What the fuck do you expect?
Jesus. And the last thing I want to talk about is Legend of Grimrock 2.
Oh god, yeah.
I love that game.
It was real good. I don't think I like those kind of games, I guess.
That's the thing. If you don't like the old style, kind of grid-based exploration RPGs that are very stat-heavy, obviously Legend of Grimrock 1 wasn't your thing, and if you didn't like Legend of Grimrock 1, Legend of Grimrock 2 is just more of 1.
Yeah.
And I adore it for that. I think it's really good. I think it really brings back that old Might and Magic feel of their old kind of grid-based RPGs with a couple of modern twists, but not enough to really say it's brand new. No, it's really the old stuff with a fresh coat of graphics. And the puzzles are really good. The boss fights are really good. The character models are excellent as well. And you can kind of really just play any style you want. They give you the opportunity to customize all the classes right down to the very last skill point, so you can really build your own classes. And if you like that kind of thing, you're going to love Legend of Grimrock, period.
I'm with Bear where, like, I don't have, like, a foundation as a youngster in this genre, so a kind of, like, modernization of it doesn't really appeal to me. But I did have fun with it, and I did, like, the 2 hours or so I played before I got intimidated and kind of overwhelmed. But it was an incredibly smart decision for them to bring the game outside because it's so much more interesting visually now, and it looks a lot better, basically.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of different areas on the island that all look rather different, so you're constantly you're not seeing the same thing over and over again like you were in 1.
Yeah.
It's got a kind of an open world feel, but really it's pretty damn narrow. I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. And I know that they improved on basically every aspect of it from the original. Like, the graphics are better, the soundtrack is fantastic, the gameplay is awesome, they brought it out.
Good.
But again, it was just like, I don't really want to play this one.
It's definitely not for everybody. But if you're into that kind of thing, and there's a dungeon editor built in, so if you want to make your own custom dungeons, you can do that.
I have just like the littlest bit of my toe into that genre from my childhood, so like not enough that I can confirm that I would love it, but it seems like if anything was going to convince me, that probably would.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Nick, did you have any other ones you want to bring up before we dive into the end here?
Pretty much hit all the big ones. I mean, I play the majority of my games are like, little game jam games that, for the most part, aren't probably worth talking about on a big scale like this, so those are the big ones.
Ryan?
Yeah, okay, I'll just bring up one more. I'm looking at the list that I gave you guys on Skype, and I'm trying to think of what I put on that we haven't talked about. We talked about Banished, the Banner Saga, Gods Will Be Watching, Goat Sim, which was not on my Game of the Year list, but I thought was interesting.
Yeah, did you want to talk about Talos Principle? I don't know if anybody else has played that one.
I haven't even touched it yet.
Not played it yet.
All right, we'll hold off on that then.
Yet. But I'm going to keep beating the Lumino City drum because nobody listens to me and nobody takes me seriously.
Nobody listens to me, 400,000.
So whenever I tell people about this game, they go, oh, that looks interesting, but it's not for me. I'm trying to find like an appropriate screenshot to bring up here. Okay, it is a game that's its principal draw is probably its visuals, and it has this cool aesthetic style where basically to make the game they just built miniatures of everything and then videotaped it to get all the animations to put it into the game. So you're very much kind of dealing with models and miniatures here. So everything's got this cool kind of like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like it's all patchwork together from like household objects, which is really neat. It gives it kind of like a children's TV show type vibe to it that is neat. But the puzzles are good. And every time I tell people about it, they go, "Oh, that looks nice," but point-and-click adventure games aren't my thing. When I was on the Co-Optional podcast, I was looking at the subreddit after, and some guy was like, Northernlion has to learn that, you know, good graphics can't save the genre. And I'm like, you haven't even fucking played it, man. Like, you just assume that it's like every other point-and-click adventure because it's a point-and-click adventure.
The genre's fine. Telltale is point-and-click.
There have been more point-and-click adventure games released this year than I think have been released in the past 5 years, or at least ones that have risen to prominence. Like, it's been a very good year for point-and-click adventure.
And the thing that I really like about Lumino City, beyond the fact that it is one of the most striking-looking games that I've ever played, and it has a great soundtrack as well, to talk about a year of the soundtrack here, but it's the puzzles are really, some of them are bullshit, okay, straight up, but most of them are tactile and physical and kind of logical, not in the traditional point-and-click adventure way. Telltale's a little bit different because it's kind of like, you know, apply, you know, plank to zombie forehead puzzles for the most part. But Lumino City is like, here's a pinball machine. You have to win the jackpot on the pinball machine by arranging the bumpers. So you set it up and you put the bumpers in one place and then you shoot the pinball and it kind of bounces around and you're like, okay, that's not right. Let's mix this up. Or you got to like, you know, set up like a circuit box properly by using like citrus fruits to connect like one, I don't know what one terminal to another terminal, or whatever kind of terminology you want to use for that. Like, it's all kind of cool tinkering mechanical stuff as opposed to like traditional point-and-click adventure stuff, which I usually find esoteric, and it's like, you know, remove the toilet paper from the outhouse so that the person who goes in to take a shit has to run away really quickly to go in. Like, yeah, so
you can sift through his poop.
This stuff from the cave a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. Very true. So I think Lumino City is not getting the due that it deserves, and I think a lot of people would like it if they gave it a chance. It is expensive for a game of this scale. Maybe it's took me about
$20.
It's $20, and it took me about, they say 10, but it took me about 5 or 6, and I did end up using a walkthrough for one of the puzzles that I figured was just straight up nonsense. It also has one of the coolest hint systems that I've ever seen in a game, where your grandfather gives you like this big encyclopedic book with 900 pages in it, and you can flip through it, and each of the pages has like content on it, but most of it is kind of gibberish, but it looks authentic. But then there's a table of contents, and the table of contents requires you to look at the puzzle and do a little bit of mental arithmetic to find out the page number. So it'll be like number of sails on the windmill times like the number of windows on the windmill minus 11. And then you do that math and you go, okay, that's page 400. And then if you flip to page 400, you'll actually understand the clues that they're giving you, as opposed to if you were just flipping through the book randomly.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's cool. That sounds interesting. That's something I'll probably look into because I like that style of game anyway.
It's neat. And I think if you give it a little bit more credit than you might think it deserves because of its genre, and you don't write it off for that, you actually find that it's a mechanically interesting game as well as being visually interesting. Is expensive? Is it worth it? I don't know. I played it for 5 hours, and I found it a very memorable experience, and it'll probably end up ranking somewhere on my top 10 list. So I would recommend it on those merits alone. But it's not very replayable, admittedly, but I like it a lot, and I feel like a lot of people are writing it off undeservedly, especially without having played it.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think that that does bring us to the big conclusion, the biggest gong bang of the year. That, of course, being NBA 2K15. So, what did you guys think about this one? I think the inclusion of associate. No, I won't. I will take that for
really
much longer.
Love that you said gong bang.
Yeah.
Look, man, I like sports games. All right,
I do too, man. Hey, you know I play NBA 2K14 all the time.
I know. I see you.
I see
you
them
all the time. I'm a big NBA and MLB game fan. So
Yeah,
those are my two
they're
big
fun.
ones.
It's a good time.
They are fun.
But
Update
so
the rosters. That's good stuff, though, right?
yeah, that's you need that new installment, man.
You're out of your element, Nick.
Step back, Nick. Step back.
The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. It's phenomenal. It's just
It's the only
great.
thing Ryan plays, apparently.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, he'll play EU4, but for the next 3 weeks, it'll just be Isaac on his channel. So
It's so hard to find a Rebirth screenshot that's not the work in progress art.
Huh.
it's weird.
There we go. I'll just take this one. There's no watermark on that, right? Yeah.
As a person who did not put that much time into vanilla and was super excited to jump into Rebirth feet first, right with everybody else, I am hooked on that game still. I love it. I have like 54 hours into it, which is nothing compared to Ryan. I get it before you even cut me off and go, 54
I'm
hours.
not that kind of guy.
Yeah, no, of course not. No, not at all. Who has it on PS4, PC, Vita, and probably has it on his 3DS, even though it doesn't exist for that yet.
He's got it on mobile.
It is super, super fun. I have a couple of complaints about it, but we can get to that in a little bit.
I think what you said about jumping into it, just like anyone else that hasn't even played Vanilla Isaac, that speaks volumes to how good it truly is, because this may be the first Isaac experience a lot of people are having, and it's still fantastic. I don't think I've seen a real negative review of it, honestly, from the folks that have played it, but it pretty much just made everything better. It addressed the majority of the concerns that I think the most people had with the game. It just created so many more possibilities. It just expanded on so much, and there were very few issues from the beginning that they're now rectifying, but I can't really fault it in any way. It's just fantastic.
The best compliment that I can give Rebirth, I do think it's better than vanilla in pretty much every way, is that it made me think or realize a bunch of problems with vanilla that I didn't even know existed. Like, there's so many things where I'm like, when I play Rebirth, I'm like, oh man, it's so nice that this works this way.
Can you name one? Got it for an example.
I think I can name one right off the top of my head. Is the fact that when you pick up a pill or when you use a pill, it doesn't slow you down or doesn't like stop you, and that might not even be like
pick up an item.
No stop Zelda over the head kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And like again, that's not even necessarily a problem with Vanilla Isaac. It was just like, oh yeah, I really like that works like that now, and I'm sure Ryan will expand on things like that too.
It's the expansion and kind of like, well, the expansion of the game in terms of a length context, but also giving two valid paths that you can take to the end of the game. Even though I have, I have kind of gravitated towards one of them. But even like the addition of just the post-it notes, so you have kind of like a visual sense of completion and like a to-do list, I think is really good.
Yeah.
I don't want to call it an ARG because it's not really, but like the hidden character and the kind of hoops that you have to jump through to actually get Platinum God beyond just grinding the items, I think is really neat. The fact that the items actually synergize, obviously, is something that is nice. There are a couple of things that I don't like. There's a couple of curses that I find just annoying, but maybe it's because I record the game. Like, I don't like Curse of Darkness at all.
Yep, I'm with you there. Curse of the Unknown annoys me.
Curse of the Unknown. Yeah.
When I can't see my health, something just happens to me mentally, and I start playing terribly. I'm just like, I don't know what it is, but it annoys me because every time I get Curse of the Unknown, I'm like, I'm going to lose at least 3 hearts on this floor just because I can't see my health.
Even so, though, I feel like these are not even necessarily problems with the game. It's just like stuff we don't like.
Well, if we want to talk about problems with the game, one of the big ones I have, and I hear it's not as bad anymore, maybe with the recent patch, is there are a couple of enemies that could just teleport under your feet.
Oh yeah, they don't do that anymore.
All right, that got fixed. Okay,
that's supposedly that's been fixed. I've not been telefragged by like one of those lumps in a couple of days at least.
Obnoxious. I hated the fact. Isn't there a room too? It's rare, but you can walk into a big room. It's typically a long room, and right by the door there are 2 chained demon dudes that just like trust.
Yeah, I don't know if that room's been changed. I've run into it a couple of times on the womb. Like those the dudes with the brimstone horns.
Yep.
You'll walk in and then they'll be chained around the door and they just bump into you right off the bat. That room is kind of bullshit.
Other than that, I don't think there's anything mechanically that I can really bitch too much about.
Honestly, and this is how I know that this is my easy game of the year.
Yeah.
Is that my biggest complaint about the game? The thing that I'm like, oh, why do they do this? Is that the map is too big to fit in the corner, but if you hit tab, it brings up the whole overlay, and I'm like, no, I don't want the whole overlay. I want the whole map in that tiny corner. Like I can squint, I can handle it. That's my biggest complaint is there's no like overlay that I can kind of like set it and forget it. Either I'm gonna be missing.
PS4 version has it, doesn't it?
You can pinch and zoom on the PS4 version, but I don't want to play the PS4 version that much. Yeah. There's no overlay where I get like the full map, the time, and I'm not going to forget what floor I'm on. But it's a really, really minor complaint.
I do find the final bosses easier. I don't know if that's
even a universal thing, though. I think it might have more to do with the fact that there's a lot more really good items that
it might be
you happen to get along the way.
The final bosses aren't as bullet hellish as they were in vanilla, and that might just be, not necessarily true difficulty in vanilla, just bullet hell. But his patterns, Isaac's patterns at the very least, are very predictable and easily avoidable. Once you get Isaac into his third phase, I very, very rarely take damage. I think he's a very simple boss fight, and he wasn't like that in vanilla. He was, again, the faster you shot, the faster he would shoot at you, and maybe that's just I guess what's the term I'm looking for? Like a fake difficulty.
Yeah, I think they may not have traded it off. They kind of made a sacrifice in the difficulty of the final boss fights for the sake of both the aesthetic and the actual gameplay change. Yeah, there you go.
Being more balanced.
And I really like the changes they've made to Mom's Heart and Isaac and the Blue Baby. Just for the virtue of them being.
Mom's Heart is harder, I find.
Yeah, definitely.
Mom's Heart is
a lot more
Mom's
difficult.
Heart might even be harder than Isaac and
I
Blue
think
Baby.
so.
Or Blue Baby.
It might be, yeah.
I think also, like, I don't feel like the game's easier. I do feel like Blue Baby and Isaac are a lot easier, but I feel like the rooms that lead up to them have a tendency to be a lot harder than they were in vanilla, which compensates for it. I don't know if it's equivalent, but
true.
the difficulty in,
the game
in Isaac
is a lot faster now. I'm sorry. The game's a lot faster now, and that kind of adds to that. Each room is a little bit more dangerous. It just feels a lot quicker. You have to be a little bit quicker on your reflexes, and that makes, especially the chest, a little bit more hard.
And you can, big rooms especially, you can run into a room that has like 4 of the sins in it, like the super evolutions of the sins, or, there's 3 adversary rooms on the
I was going to say
room.
the adversary. Fuck that. Those rooms
Or
suck.
on the chest, you can get like double cage rooms, which are annoying. But the main draw for me in Isaac has never been that it's difficult. It's more that it's like difficult enough that you feel like you need to overcome like a certain threshold, and there's a little bit of like anticipation or anxiety there. But it's true that you need to be overpowered to beat the game, basically. Like you need to be like twice as strong to beat the chest as you need to beat the cathedral, basically, just because of the rooms that you face. So I don't necessarily buy that it's easier, but I do buy that like people probably win a higher percentage of games because it really only takes 1 or 2 OP items to take you over the threshold.
I think there's a lot more items in Rebirth that can almost by themselves guarantee a victory than there were in Vanilla Isaac, and I don't know if I'm just
possible.
shooting out of my ass on that, but maybe.
Well, there's certain things, like there's extra guppy items now, so becoming guppy is easier.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if becoming Guppy's easier.
One,
No?
right?
You don't think so?
There's, wait, what new Guppy items are there?
Isn't it
Well,
just
there's Guppy's collar.
It's that they made all the Guppy items count toward Guppy, I think is
Oh, Guppy's
really what it
Hairbolt
is.
didn't count before. Now
Yeah,
it does,
yeah.
so there's technically the 5 of them now.
I totally forgot about that, yeah.
And
still
I feel
think
like they
it's-
appear in red chests a lot more often, too.
I thought that, but I've been...
Oh, would you think that? Do you think you would think that? Mr.
like a
3 red
1 in
chest and
50
the
chance,
deal
I've
with the
heard.
devil for Guppy?
Well, I think it's a feast or famine thing. And there's kind of like a standard deviation going on where, like, if you flip a coin, there's a 50% chance that it becomes heads. There's a 50% chance that it becomes tails. But if you look at a small sample, you could get heads 4 times in a row a lot, or tails 4 times in a row. I tend to find that, like, I get Guppy in fits and spurts, and then I go, I get Guppy like twice in a row when people are like, it's too easy. And then I get like four runs in a row where I get 2 Guppy items and never get a 3rd or 4th or 5th one. And then I start thinking like, man, like they really nerfed it, so it's harder to become Guppy. I don't know if it's any harder. Like by the end of Vanilla, I was becoming Guppy on probably a quarter of my runs, and I feel like that's roughly where I am in Rebirth. I do think that to make Guppy more interesting, they should make more transformations, because as it is right now, like Guppy
hoping
is
for
like
more.
what people go for. You become Guppy, nobody even cares about Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, I actually just became Lord of the Flies for the first time today, and I had to have people point out to me what the hell was going on, because I was like,
People
what is this? Yeah.
But yeah, my problem with the Guppy thing is just that the meta has become kind of static again. I hope that an expansion, I mean, it bodes well that this is what I'm talking about, given that this is like a game of the year type stuff. But I hope in an expansion they balance it out to make deals with the angel more viable and maybe even like force you down that path more often, because the way it works right now is if you're like a half decent player and you can survive with a little bit lower HP, you just take your first deal with the devil even if it's shitty, and then at some point you're like, oh, it's brimstone, and then like it's mom's knife, oh, I'm guppy, and all you have to do is survive long enough to get there.
I'm trying to think of like the new deal with the angel items, and there's like one good one and then the others are just still shit. Like Breath of Life is garbage.
There's the
Holy Mantle.
Holy Mantle is the one I was thinking of. This is the good
Trinity
one.
Shield is really good.
There's the whole Godhead set, which is ridiculous.
I don't even know what that is. Maybe I haven't unlocked that yet.
Yeah, you haven't unlocked that.
Yeah.
Have you unlocked that, Bear?
No, I've watched all the other much better people do it before me. I'm so far behind, man. Like I haven't filled a post-it note on normal for any character. Like I am so far behind.
I'm done with the post-it notes. I'm trying to finish up the challenges and then I'll tackle hard mode.
Hard mode's not.
It's so much better after the patch. It's a completely different experience now.
Well, it sounds like it just sounds like normal mode with less hearts.
I kind of feel curses. Like hard mode shouldn't exist in a way, because it makes it seem like there's this like delineation, but after the patch they're very, very similar. You get more champions that don't drop consumables, and you get more curses.
I think I was talking to you about this on Skype, Ryan, where hard mode before, even though it was a glitch, it actually changed the game pretty drastically because the meta was entirely different. Items that were absolute trash in normal mode became incredibly viable in hard mode because they upped your luck or they upped your chances of getting just normal drops, and that made the run worthwhile. While in normal mode, you got those items anyway, so those items were just reroll bait every single time. And now that they got rid of that, what's the difference?
I was very shocked, actually, that was a bug that they patched. I thought that was the intended way the game was meant to be played.
Same. Yeah, but I don't know. I wish that either one of them didn't exist or that they were far enough apart that there was a reason to choose one or the other. Like, as it is right now, I find myself being like, it doesn't matter whether I play normal or hard mode.
Just a hard mode for the sake of hard mode, right?
Yeah, it's like you play on hard mode to not give anybody an excuse if you win a run.
Right, yeah. Well, you were playing on normal, so whatever.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
Once I unlock everything, I'm never going to play it again. I have no reason to. It just makes it just more frustrating. Like, not being able to see your life all the time or not being able to see the map all the time. It's like, why? Yeah. I want all the options. I want to be able to play to my best.
Whatever, man. You're not a true Isaac player. You're playing the Lost on hard mode all the time.
Masochistic handicaps is what the true Binding of Isaac players are all about, man.
I think there's some cool curses, though. Like, I like Curse of Blindness. It's forced me into some situations that I wouldn't have otherwise put myself in, and I think that's kind of a neat way of mixing up what's kind of a static thing where people are like, I take this item, I don't take this item, I don't take this item, I take this item.
Makes it less mathematic.
Yeah, I think it forces you into situations you're uncomfortable with sometimes, or, you get a big question mark, and then you're like, oh, it's a Tears upgrade. Yeah. Okay. I don't like Curse of the Dark just because it makes the video come out weird, but I understand why it exists.
I don't understand why Curse of Darkness exists, because I don't have a problem seeing.
If your gamma's at 100.
Your gamma's up to 100.
Even when it's not up to 100, I can see fine.
On the Vita version, it's really like there's enemies that are impossible to see until they're right up in your face.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Curse of the Unknown, I think, is kind of cool. I think it forces you to play a little bit more consciously, and especially when it comes to deals with the devil, you gotta think twice if you're gonna kill yourself by taking them. What is it? Curse of the Labyrinth is actually good now on the first floor, at least, because you get one more item room without a key. And then there's like Curse of the Lost.
Curse of the Maze.
Curse of the Maze, yeah.
Curse of the Maze is annoying. Sometimes can be beneficial. I kind of like it.
Yeah,
I like the idea.
Item rooms with it.
Yeah, exactly. Curse of the Lost is just kind of like, man,
It's Curse of the Lost.
Can't see.
Yeah, same thing as, what was it, Curse of Darkness in vanilla?
Yes.
You want to know what I really like about the changes from vanilla? It's the fact that there's a huge amount of diversity now with how you can win runs. I feel like with vanilla, there was like maybe 5 or 6 ways that pretty much you'd always end up with. This feels like there's almost infinite possibilities of how I could end up finishing things. And, the videos that I've been posting on my channel lately have been an attest to the fact that there's like a million different combinations that will result in very different feelings with how your tiers synergize, how you play, how you see things coming together. And I'm still discovering ones. Like the other day, I've had this one with basically like aerial bombardment of grenade tiers turning into gas bombs. And the entire room was just filling itself with gas of everything exploding. It was like a Ipecac and Split Shot and Cricket's Head and Pyromaniac basically made it so everything exploded and I was fine. Like, those are kind of cool synergies, and I just wish there's even more. But as it is, it's fantastic. So that's the biggest change for me that I love.
Somebody just blew a party horn in the background?
I heard
that was my chair.
It was so
I love Rebirth.
Ooh, yeah.
I completely agree with you, Nick. I was struggling to find what I was trying to say earlier when I said that like the difficulty of Isaac wasn't the main draw. That is what you described is the main draw for me, is the weird synergies that you can get that are still viable. And Rebirth definitely hits that. Like, you're right, in vanilla, it was like you had Mom's Knife or Brimstone, or you were Guppy, or you got an incredibly high rate of fire with high damage, usually. Probably as a result of getting Polyphemus.
Book of Revelations, 9 volt, and just spam health.
Oh, yeah. They're like, nuns have a Book of Revelations 9 volt or nail or something like that, and then just unlimited health. Like, you get the wafer and you just literally can't die.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. In Rebirth, I've had runs where I really do feel that you can have a less viable run, get to the chest, and get carried easier just by getting some weird synergies. Like, even like a Tiny Planet Lump of Koi is
a really good item, yeah.
Lump of Coal, Soy Milk. Those items are like all not so great by themselves, but then they combine and they make like a big, ever expanding ring of death around you. Or Epic Fetus Quad Shot, where you fire like 4 barrages down from the sky, or Ipecac Cricket's Body, where your Ipecac shots make Ipecac shots, which sometimes then you get rubber cement, they bounce off the wall and come back and hit you in the face. I had one run recently where I had Blank Card, which I think is one of the coolest items, and then the Jera rune, which duplicates chests, and I just made the 4 golden chests on the chest into 32 chests and opened all of them up, and was like, that's stuff that couldn't be possible in vanilla before. It is kind of like, I feel like Rebirth is cooler because it's a little bit more of a more open sandbox, where a lot of the crazy shit, sometimes you get like 2020 Brimstone and you're like, it doesn't work. I just shoot 1 laser. But sometimes you get the Blank Card Jera rune and you can get 60 items on the chest. So
it sets a very different tone psychologically in the way you play, knowing that you may be having a really shit run and maybe it's only getting worse, but there are possibilities that you could use in variables that maybe you didn't realize you had access to, that all of a sudden could reforge a path in a way that you thought was never going to happen. So knowing that those things can happen and can synergize means that you're going to have sort of a happier time playing the game at all times, instead of just marching off to your doom knowing, well, it's pretty much too late to turn back now.
Yeah.
I agree. As long as you don't get Monster's Lung Tiny Planet, you're good.
Oh.
I had that once. I cried. And
Tiny Planet.
It's real sad.
I pick it up every time.
There's runers out there.
You can't. It's impossible to do anything with Monster's Lung and Tiny Planet together, though, because you spit your shit and it just goes out like a half an inch, tries to rotate around you, and just disappears.
That sounds like a really bad bowel movement, man.
Yeah, it gave me bad bowel movements.
Tiny Planet is the one item I take it almost every time it shows up, but I'm conscious of the fact that it can ruin runs. Like
Tiny Planet Mom's Knife.
That's the worst combination that exists, I believe.
Tiny Planet Proptosis makes it so that you can't shoot in front of you. Like, you got to get really lucky and stand. You got to stand like at a diagonal,
like cube of meat space between the enemies.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting. I like Rebirth. It's my game of the year for sure.
It's just like flash a thing on the screen. It's like, warning, when you pick this up, your run will be ruined.
That'd be nice.
They just stick a little warning sign on the top of the planet. That would be a beautiful aesthetic for it.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. That's Rebirth, and I believe that wraps up our favorite indie games of 2014. So this ended up being about 10 times as long as I had planned it to initially, but there was quite a bit to cover.
2 hours.
Just short 2 hours, yeah.
What the hell?
I know. It's kind of turned into something crazy. But, thanks a lot. Anybody that chose to watch, we'll link... Well, there's not much point in linking to each other's perspectives of this, is there? But channels will all be down in the description, and we may end up doing something similar next year. We'll see. We'll see if we're still friends by then, but... Nonetheless, thanks for watching.
At the rate it's going, me and Ryan will not be.
Yeah. But thanks for watching.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
See you later, everybody.
I guess Bear's gonna say goodbye on the video that I brought in. That's no problem. See you later. I turned it off.
Yeah, I did too.